And there she is. Okay, so welcome, welcome. I am really thrilled to have you join in this virtual global community on this topic of why the feminine is needed in the new world vision that's being created right now. So if you don't know me, I am an astrologer, and I'm also a devotee of Venus and the Venus mysteries, and specifically the Venus cycle as this cosmic support to drop us into our own inner guidance and to cultivate that, especially during these times of intense upheaval. And they have been coming for a long time in the astrological myths, in the cycles ending. And so here we are, we're in it. And so I really want to pull out the threads of why the feminine is medicine right now and how we can fortify that, how we can magnify that. Because I believe that our feminine nature is actually crucial for the solution, for the vision. And that is regardless of our sex, that the feminine nature itself is calling out to be embodied on the planet in both men and women and in all of us. And so here we are. And we're going to start with a little bit of a drop in, just so we can come into the feminine nature and not just be coming from our heads, which is how we tend to roll unless we take a moment. So let's take a moment and let's just find ourselves in whatever our space is and sink in. And just notice how you're breathing and allow that to just be natural and easy. And as you're noticing how you're breathing, begin to also notice how gravity is pulling you down gently. That there's nothing to be done about that. It's just happening. It's like this gentle pulling you down, inviting you to let go of all those patterns of micro tension that built up. And as you're breathing, just naturally noticing how your breath is moving through you, begin to turn your attention inside of your body and begin to notice what's happening on the inside. And you may want to allow yourself to slow down and sink into that a little bit, to soften into that. Again, allowing it to be easy, natural, not anything to do here, but to surrender to this moment right here through your sensations, the sensation of your breath, and beginning to imagine that gravity, that gravitational pull, just starting at the top of your head and just very gently, very easily flowing down into your head, relaxing your brain, relaxing your eyeballs, relaxing your tongue and your jaw and your throat. And I'd like you to just experiment with saying, ah. Just feeling that letting go and letting that gravitational pull just relax into your heart space and roll down your shoulders into your arms. And then come into your interior space of all of your organs and allow your organs to say, ah, however they would, that they don't have to hold themselves up in whatever way they have been. And letting that gravitational pull bring you into your womb, if you have one, or into your pelvic bowl, into your perineum, feeling that wherever you're sitting, wherever you're touching on your chair gets softer and you make more contact. And allowing the warmth and the relaxation of just releasing whatever's there to roll into your thighs, into your knees, and all the way down your calves, out the bottom of your feet. Again, just letting that go, because you don't need to hold it anymore if you don't choose. So easy, so natural. And then noticing how you're breathing now, if it's changed at all since you began. And putting one warm hand on your heart and one warm hand on your belly, and just giving yourself some contact. The feminine is sensual. The feminine is our bodies. The feminine is our feeling realm. And putting your attention on your heart, taking a few breaths into your heart and just noticing what's there in this space of openness. And if you find yourself going into your head and thinking and, wanting to go up, and you choose to go back in, you can again, ah, 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 right on down into your heart. And allowing whatever to be there to be received by you without changing it, without judging it. And it may feel like nothing, and it may feel like grief, and it may feel like joy. It may feel like fear, whatever's there. Just touching into your own treasure in your own heart, always waiting for us to connect. And then slowing down one more time as we finish to find your perfect pace, to feel yourself. Maybe it's a little slower, or maybe you need to speed up to feel yourself. Finding that perfect resonance with yourself so that you're resonating with you. You're twinning your own energy. You're vibrating double what you are, because it's so right that it reflects. And if that doesn't make any sense, that's fine. And then slowly, and I like to end with a little spiral or some kind of movement, and you can begin to come out. I like to do a little spiral in my spine as I'm coming out, or however it feels good to you. And bring your attention back into the space around you, holding that center, holding that interior space as you begin to tune into what's happening in your environment and this Zoom and my voice, and coming back into this listening of this call for feminine wisdom. So beautiful. If you want to put in the notes anything that was for you, feel free. So the feminine doesn't do it alone. The feminine shares, the feminine feels, and the feminine actually really gets affirmed and nurtured when she expresses her interior space with others. So feel free if you wish, and no need, it's totally up to you. But if you want to write a word or two in the notes of what that was like for you, that would be beautiful. The feminine loves choice. The feminine loves consent. And so, this way that we have been trained to operate, of forcing ourselves and pushing through, is contrary to our feminine nature. Great. Yeah, the organs love to let go, don't they? Yay. Home. What a beautiful word. Yes, home. I have been dropping into the Mary Magdalene mysteries with this book, Mary Magdalene Revealed, and just loving this idea of God as the goodness within ourself. and how radical that was for what Christianity ended up being, to imagine that God was living right within us, the good, and however we see that. So however we experience that authentically, the mystery, Great Spirit, God, however that is, Goddess, is right inside of us. And so I would say, this is the time that we need this resource of our own goodness and our own center in the storm, because we are in the storm now. We're very much in the storm. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the astrology of why the feminine is so urgent. And then I'm going to talk more about the resource of tapping into our feminine, and specifically how the Venus cycle can help us. So we are in this threshold in the age of Aquarius, which has been talked about for a long time. And we're in a particularly intense moment just coming out of these eclipses, which really amplify this Capricorn energy, which is the distorted Capricorn energy, is the dominator culture that we've been living in up into our oldest stories. And so different cultures have been talking about this great change in this watershed moment for a long time, and that there's going to be a great purification, and that everything will come up to show itself so that we can choose something differently. So what we're seeing right now is we're seeing the abuses of power in government, in laws, the manipulation, and really the bones of the hierarchy, which is a male-dominated hierarchy, and all the systems of hierarchy, of race and class and sex. We're seeing the coming apart of our culture as we knew it, because it was held together with this dominator consciousness. And so the most incredible gift that is so easy to forget, and this is what I love about astrology, is we really get this gift of perspective, is that we have life. We have this precious human life. We have this intelligence that other animals, as beautiful and incredible and magical as they are, don't have the same ability to imagine. We have the power of imagination. We have the power of being able to use our hands so we can do something with that imagination and create. We're incredibly creative beings. And so we have this life force that is a gift, and that everything came together for there to be life on this planet, for that to be sustained, and then for us to have the ability to imagine and create our world is quite a miracle. And so when we look at what happens with that life force, when we look at what do we create with it, we have this choice of love or war. And I've been rereading the book, the classic, if any of you know The Chalice and the Blade by Leon Eisler. It's quite incredible. And it really talks about the chalice being the feminine, nurturing nature, and the blade being the dominator sword. And how we have this legacy as humans. It's a very, very interesting and important time to be looking at where we came from and how did we get here. And there's a lot of mystery around how we got here, and there's a lot that we don't know. But we do know that we have a history and a legacy in prehistory of a reverence for the feminine. We have these figurines they were called Venus figurines, going back 20,000 years or longer, that were the breasts and the vulva, and often headless, found in many, many places, that really showed that there was a quality to the cultures that came before this quality now that didn't choose war. And the reason that I love this book is because it talks about the reinterpretation of these early archaeological digs that looked at all these Venus figurines and said, oh yeah, that was just an ancient version of Playboy. You know, they were basically these objectified sexual objects for men. And the women archaeologists who came in began to dig deeper and to see that that actually was not the case at all, that a lot of the interpretations through the hierarchical masculine model were projecting their own hierarchy, they're projecting their own male dominance onto these figurines, onto this interpretation of culture. Yes, absolutely. I'll go ahead and put the name of the book. I think if you haven't read this book yet, it's incredible, incredible. So the chalice and the blade, Leon Eisler. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to just read that really quick because I'm going to read this little excerpt because it so relates to this moment and this turning, because we have this choice of how are we going to go forward? How are we going to create culture from this moment into the future? So it says, preserved in a cave sanctuary for over 20,000 years, a female figure speaks to us about the minds of our early Western ancestors. She is small and carved out of stone, one of the so-called Venus figurines found all over prehistoric Europe. Unearthed in excavations over a wide geographical area, from the Balkans in Eastern Europe to Lake Baikal in Siberia, all the way west to Willendorf near Vienna, and the Grotte du Pape in France. These figurines have been described by some scholars as expressions of male eroticism, that is, an ancient analog for today's Playboy magazine. To other scholars, they are only something used in primitive and presumably obscene fertility rites. But what is the actual significance of these ancient sculptures? Can they really be dismissed as the products of unregenerated male imagination? Or do they tell us something about ourselves, about how both women and men once venerated the life-giving powers of the universe? So that's the kicker when we look at these cultures that lived for seemingly thousands of years without war, is that they weren't actually the opposite of patriarchy. They weren't matriarchy. They were actually equality, very, very egalitarian. And so we're really at this point where the last Venus cycle, if you've been following me, was all about this internal balancing of the masculine and feminine and touching into those wounds. And are we able to know our wounding, to know what it's like to be born into a society that's male supremacist and white supremacist and ageist and classist, and to work through our pain around that without weaponizing our pain, and then basically choosing war again. So we can go, we've seen the war upon war upon war from one party that has been, or one segment of the culture that has been victimized, then victimizing the other, right? This could go on forever. So we're at a moment where it's full stop asking us to do something different and to bring forth the feminine in a way that is not easy for us modern people, but simple. In a way that does connect back to the cultures that had masculine and feminine in more balance, that lived in their bodies. That when we look at the indigenous people of this country that I live in, the United States of America, they had a lot of feminine balanced with masculine, as well as with the African cultures. They were connected to the earth. And so there's a way that the feminine being left out is creating a hell on earth and the memory of a time when the feminine was included, not to say that we want to recreate that exact culture, that's where all the memories are of the Garden of Eden and a paradise on earth, where that moment of uprising life was used towards creation, not destruction. So I wanted to just dip into that briefly before I talk about more of the astrology, because it's so powerful to know in our bones, which I always have known, that this reality of domination is not normal. It's not just how humans are. I mean, we can all make our own conclusion about that, but that's been my knowing for some time. Know that there is this ability to be in balance and to come from this place of care and connection, and that it's our job as leaders. I think if you were called to this experience, you are someone of heart who is leading some way in your world. And so for us to discover, how do I keep my center, how do I connect through care, and how do I help to create this culture of connection even as the world falls apart more and more, is the critical question that's on the table. How do we do this in our own way? And it has to do with, being in our bodies. It has to do with allowing ourselves that space to listen to our heart before we take action. So right now, things are heating up. Okay, we just came out of those eclipses. We had the final Capricorn eclipse, which is still rippling until the new moon. It will continue to ripple, but whatever came forth for you in that experience of seeing how that dominating energy lives in your world is very important for going forward. Because when we are in right action, when we heal the masculine within us, and it's that sacred, healthy, protecting masculine, then that part of us can support the feminine to come forward in a new way, maybe never been known before, can really back us when we make that bid to come from our heart. And we need the space and the boundaries to do that. We need to know ourselves to do that. So Mars has been in his home sign of Aries. Mars represents the masculine. Mars connects with that first uprising sacred life force. And we have the power to direct that towards love or war. We're the ones who have the power to direct that. So it's been all about Venus, if you've been following my stories, because we just started a new Venus cycle. I'm going to circle back to that. But this Venus cycle is very important because it connects back to 2012, which is really where this all began, this new Earth we're creating. But now we have Mars, who is in his home sign, and he's going to go retrograde in his home sign of Aries. And so he's going to be in Aries for 6 months instead of 6 weeks. So things in the world could get very intense if that life force is used towards war. We're going to see the conflicts. It's like adding fuel to the fire. So when we ground into our feminine knowing, we are actually collectively, the feminine does not work alone. Right now, the field of us is amplifying our intention here to align with the feminine, to be more of the feminine, to bring more of the feminine. As we do that, we can help to steward that fire towards creation, even as, of course, there's going to be things that end. But as far as us, as far as our relationships, so that we don't tear each other apart as a human family, and that we actually bring more more of all we've learned to bear about what spirituality is in a very human way, in a very on the ground, I'm in reaction, I want to go to war, and I'm going to do something different. So in some ways it feels like it's for those of us that have been on the path of personal growth, have been on the path of waking up to who we are, to seeing our conditioning and how that informs us, our trauma. It's like, this is our, it's a big exam or something. It's a big test to see how much we can live into that. So Mars is in his home sign of Aries, and he is about to come into contact in the next couple days with Chiron, which represents the wounded healer that has been in Aries for a couple years. And it represents the healing of the masculine, the wounded masculine that feels impotent, that feels like he can't protect, that feels like he can't be angry. And we see this in our culture with men who don't know how to stabilize into the healthy masculine, and that oftentimes that distorted masculine is coming from a place of insecurity, because the secure masculine does not need to act out. And we haven't had initiations for men or for women, or for any of us coming into a coming of age to grow up and to mature. In this culture, we don't have that. And so this is a huge coming of age for the masculine in all of us, to grow up and to be accountable so that our actions mirror our heart. Because when we wait for our heart and we get that clarity from our heart and we're listening to our body, and then it's like, then the masculine can go, yes, this is right. And we can apply that energy there. So Mars meeting up with Chiron, the wounded healer, the wound that can never heal, the place of deepest separation, no matter where that is for you personally in your chart, it's going to be a collective theme of opening that up. Now, in the last week, 3 exalted men in the spiritual community have been exposed for misusing their sexual energy towards their young students. Or I don't know all the stories of all 3 of them, but the same theme. And it feels like here's the next layer, of breaking that sacred contract between teacher, student, between commitments and relationships being broken, all of this. Oh, somebody's off mute. Okay, there we go. So we may see more of this. We may see more of where people have been in positions of power, in positions of influence, and they have not been in integrity and in right action, and that distortion of the masculine will be exposed. If you have Chiron in Aries yourself, which I think is from very late 60s to 77, you could Google it. This is going to be also very powerful for you, because you have your own masculine wound in this placement. So look for this masculine to come in, Mars and Aries, and really show us where we're still out of balance. So it's a really good time to know what house Aries is contained in your own chart, because that house, that place of life house, is going to be activated for the next 6 months. And that's going to be the place where you will be so blessed to keep your cool. Yes. Okay, beautiful. I just saw in the notes what Aman said about Anana. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we'll talk about Anana too. So the thing about this that is pretty cray is that Mars is going to be in Aries, and he's going to meet up with the 2 of the major star bodies that represent the dark feminine. Okay, so Chiron breaks open our heart. There's definitely an opening up of the pain body of where we haven't been connected to our right action, to our own ability to create our life, to create abundance, to take care of our family, whatever that is. And then Mars is going to be meeting up with Black Moon Lilith, who is the one who was exiled from the Garden of Eden because she wouldn't submit to Adam, the original man. And then Eris, who was discovered in 2005, who's a dwarf planet, who's, you know, she's just going to be an Aries, she's going to be an Aries forever. She moves really slow, but they had to demote Pluto to a dwarf planet because she had all the same qualities as Pluto, and they didn't want to promote her to a full-on planet. So she's a dwarf planet, but she is the goddess of chaos. So it's like the warrior meeting the goddess of chaos and Black Moon Lilith happening. So it's going to be so important to find that neutrality so we are not getting into using our pain as a weapon, even in defense, because that could get really ugly and you're going to see it happening around you. And it doesn't mean that we don't hold people accountable, and it doesn't mean that we're not fierce, and it doesn't mean that we're not clear about what's right and wrong. But the medicine of Venus right now is asking us to recreate culture in a new way. And that's why I brought in that culture piece of a possibility of our ancient culture. Your cells, your bones, your DNA remembers that somewhere, that egalitarian. And that we can hold space for how lost men have been, for the early trauma that many or most of them have around circumcision, and that they haven't been initiated, and yet we need to do it differently together. And so us holding that space of the feminine and backing ourselves in our own feminine nature sends the message that the feminine will be supported within our own being. And then together as a field, and I think everyone in here is a woman, but regardless, that we will be generating that together, that heart space, that internal space. So thank you. Eris is the goddess of chaos and discord. So this is going to be very interesting ride into the age of Aquarius. We're going to have another solar eclipse on December 16th, I believe it is, and it will be right before Saturn and Jupiter come into Aquarius and we go into the age of Aquarius. And we're really, to me, it feels like we're in this portal right now and a door is going to close. Some door of possibility is going to close and we're going to go forward with what we have. So this time is incredibly generative, and not to be in fear about that, but energetically, that's what it feels like. That it's really important right now that we are holding space for something new and maybe something never known before in our own body, of this possibility of staying open and staying curious and holding divergent viewpoints, holding a lot of space for divergent viewpoints, because the nature of reality is so far beyond what we can imagine. And so if we think that anyone has it figured out, right now, we're going to be surprised, but if we're going to be shocked, we're going to be blown away. Because the nature of reality, any mystic will tell us, and our own mystical experiences know that it's a trip beyond what we can even conceive. So we must be staying open and tuning in to our own guidance. So there it is right there. So this is why the feminine is so needed. Let me just see if there's anything. The other thing I want to say before I go to the feminine, which I do really want to focus there, is that Mercury is stationing right now at 5 degrees Cancer. So the next few days may be very confusing. It's been confusing. There's a lot of confusion energy. And Mercury is going to go direct on early Sunday morning Pacific time. The interesting thing that I learned from Gary Caton, one of my favorite sky astrologers, is that this comet Neowise is very close to where Mercury is stationing. And Mercury is going to be showing up in the morning sky if you're up and you're seeing Venus, who's with Aldebaran. If you're seeing Mars and Saturn and Jupiter, wow, it's like a total show in the morning sky. But Mercury is also going to be visible. And so Mercury is our mind. And we know our mindset, our mind impacts so much. And Mercury is in the sign of Cancer, the sign of the mother, really asking us, in a sense, what have we learned in the last 2 years with these eclipses tipping off the Capricorn patriarchy and the maternal care connection? How do we protect out of love and not fear? You know, Cancer can be very fearful and very defensive. You know, so what have we learned going forward about how to find the people that we can create a sense of family with and ground into with whatever's coming, and who we can create, you know, food security, medicine security, knowing where our water is. You know, we are in for a wild ride in the next years of living in this planet as a human. So again, like, who are your people that resonate, that have that resonance, that you feel like you want to create this soul family with, to weather whatever's coming, and to be committed to being joyful in it, to be committed to playing in it, because that's what the feminine is also asking us to, and that takes a lot of superpowers when fear is really in the field and things are changing quickly, to dare to drop into playfulness and to dance and to sing. And yet that's very much what the feminine is imploring us to find, those places and those times, in order to get through this as you know, all the resistance movements have had, you know, song, dance, that's how they survived. I had a great quote that I'm not remembering right now, but I will post it. I'll post it on my page, and it's from that, you know, I can't remember what tribe, but that elder native indigenous grandmother who is talking about, you know, we've been being persecuted for as long as we can remember, and we still sing and we still dance and we still have joy. Like, that is part of the resistance, that we have joy, that we enjoy our bodies, that we tune into the miracle of life, even as the world around us gets increasingly uncertain. Okay, so Mercury's stationing. We're going to have this ride of Mars holding down this very strong yang energy from now until January. And we also have the next conjunction of Pluto transformation and Jupiter expansion happening in Capricorn. And now Saturn, that rules Capricorn, is back in Capricorn at 29 degrees. Feels like it's really calling us to create, to look at the culture that we have, to look at it nakedly, to look at it honestly, and to really see it for what it is, and all the blessings and in all the oppression, and it's like a sobering of where we've been. But we don't need to add blame, and we don't need to add shame into that. We don't need to blame and shame each other into doing the right thing and creating the new culture. That is the anti-message right now. That is the South Node in Sagittarius asking us to let go of righteousness and let go of being right and lording it over someone else because we know the way and they should do this and that. I mean, that's all the same dominator. So it's going to be really important to be in the feminine, to feel there's a lot of manipulation. There's a lot of forces at play. We are in a war of consciousness right now. And what we choose going forward, if we can get the clarity of our own heart and listen to that, and of course, we're going to listen to the externals. We're going to read things. We're going to listen to the conversations. But if we can learn to trust our own inner knowing, that is going to be very important for getting through this eye of the needle and not going in the wrong direction, not getting on the wrong train. We're going to be getting invited to get on a lot of trains, would be a metaphor. And don't get on the wrong train. If your heart says, I don't know, don't get on the train. You know, that clarity, it feels urgent. And I don't usually talk like that, but I'm going to say that. So, it is not her, Rachel. Thanks for asking, Luza Urib. I'm not sure, but I will definitely post her. It was a beautiful prayer from her, and I'll post it on my page so you all can see it when we're done. It's so gorgeous. I want to read it every day. It's going to be my prayer every day. Okay, so we get it. The astrology it's heavy. It's not necessarily getting lighter, and we've got this. We came for this. We were born for this, and so here we go. And really coming into our own magnificence in the face of a world that is unraveling, you know, on one level. So the feminine piece of this, the call of the feminine, you know, is really this Venus cycle, as you've heard me talk about. And this is our heart, our access to our heart. I mean, she's in the sky, obviously, and we're here in the earth, but the earth and Venus are sister planets, and there's a resonance there, and there's a reflection there. And I really experience her as a wise sister who gives some space and some perspective. And that's what happens when we have reaction. We have no space. We're just reacting. We're choosing war without knowing that we're choosing war. And one of my favorite books is talks about the power of undefended language, how defense is the first act of war. So, wow, how do we stay open without getting creamed in the face of an increasingly conflicted society where people are taking sides and wanting us to take sides? And we're coming up on our election, obviously, here in the United States, that has global implications. So how do we do it? You know, how do we do it? And so many of you have embodiment practices. And so those are going to be important. Those are going to be so important because our mindset is really getting support from our heart in this next Venus cycle. So she started a cycle on June 3rd. She met with the sun as close to the earth as she gets. They made love the way I see it. They had this divine union, and she got infused with this Gemini consciousness of playful, open, wildly curious, fusion of mind, heart, flirtatious. It's like the sensuality. Oh, there's somebody waiting. The sensuality of thinking, the sensuality of ideas. I mean, if you know Venus and Gemini women, they get totally turned on by words and conversations and, you know, intelligence. You know, I don't know if any Venus and Geminis in the house. So if you know this energy for your own self, for your own Venus, then you're going to get a real strong blessing on that. But all of us are being invited to learn about how to bring the feminine forward, how to allow the feminine to lead, because this cycle, it repeats every 8 years. So not only are we starting a 19-month cycle when Venus met Sun on June 3rd in the sign of Gemini, we're starting a new 8-year cycle where Venus crossed the face of the sun in this place that we normally can't see her back in 2012, and really brought into our assignment on Earth the return of the solar feminine, the return of the heart leading, the invitation to embody the light codes, the invitation to reimagine relatedness, to not have there be so much polarity between the masculine and feminine. Gemini energy is very, it's very mutable, it's very changeable. And so being able to hold space, I mean, not that we can't polarize into, into different manifestations around gender and, play with all of that. But Gemini can hold a lot of space for a lot of different variations without judgment, while knowing herself, while knowing what she is. And so it's increasing our capacity to it's increasing our capacity even to imagine what our culture could be. And so we are meant to tell this story. Part of what we're doing here is we're retelling the story. And so it would be very helpful to go back and to read some history of, prehistory and ancient history of how did we come to be, or to touch into that if you have, if you have that inspiration at all, because we are writing this next chapter of what humans are going to be. And are we going to find a balance with technology so we can actually stay in our bodies and be here? Uranus and Taurus, age of Aquarius. Or are we going to become slaves to technology? Everybody gets their chip, and then we can't even have an organic experience of ourselves anymore because we can't feel ourselves because there's so much electronic interference in our reality that this natural human experience ends. I mean, let's get real. That's one of the trains. So when we take a stand by being in our bodies and making choices around supporting our naturalness, supporting our ability to unplug, and supporting our ability to go and be in the dark without lights, without electricity, and to dip into the ancient knowing, to go out under the stars, to purify and come back into our knowing and to build that into our lives. That really is the revolution, no matter what we go out and do with our Mars, with our right action. So 2012 was the beginning, the threshold, and now it's time to really embody this new feminine energy. So if you're not following the Venus cycle, I encourage you to do so, because it really gives us this evolutionary stretch. Venus starts out in between the Earth and the Sun, and then she goes all the way around to the other side of the Sun, unseen, and that's the underworld. And then she comes back. So she starts out as morning star, where she is now. She's unseen behind the Sun for 2 to 3 months, and this time it's a long time. She's going to be in the underworld for a long time, starting in February of 2021. And then she's going to come back out as evening star. And so we need both the fierce feminine, which is this young morning star, like now is the time, like what is your bold, wild heart wish? What do you want to create in your life in the next year and a half? Take a stand for that, announce that, make a video about that, write that down, tell that to your love, like stand on a chair in your kitchen, like that's morning star Venus. She's like, yeah, I know the whole world's falling apart, but this is what I want to do. This is what I want to create in beauty. This is what I'm gonna put my attention on. I'm having people coming in to the room. So this is the time to make your bold stand, because right now Venus is at her boldest and her brightest in the morning sky. So the energy is very supportive for your own heart to be like, wow, this is really scary. This is really edgy, but I'm going for it. Here we go. This is what I want to create. I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to be vulnerable and actually admit more of my truth to myself about what I want. And Mars is going to be right there being like, okay, baby, let's do it. He's so hot right now, as long as he doesn't kill anyone. No, so, that's the invitation. So much more to say, but I wanted to just convey that call to do everything that you know to embody your feminine, and that Venus is here for you. she's in the morning sky, she's shining bright, to go out there and do your embodiment practices in her light, the light of Venus coming into your eyes. She meets up with the moon once a month. That is a beautiful time to take that moon. You know, the moon is our history, our conditioning, keeping us safe, our ancestors. It's familiar, and it can be a bit of a limitation. It can be a bit of a prison if we don't stretch into the new. Our moon can really hold us in, like, this is how it was, you know. So Venus takes us all the way around the sun. So when we watch her, when we look at the moon and Venus meeting up, which they're going to do on the 17th for the first time since Venus is direct in Gemini. So she's in the same sign as she was when she met the sun, because she's going to keep moving, of course. But the whole 19 months of this next cycle that we're in, we're going to be learning about the consciousness of Venus and Gemini. And it very much has, if you know the Tibetan mythologies at all and practices, it very much has the feeling of the dakinis, sky dancers. It's like, how do we find pleasure in falling as our ego goes, ah, and then like, oh, wow. You know, like Chogyam Rinpoche said, the bad news is you're falling. The good news is there's no ground. So it's like, how do we get comfortable with that level of change and actually take pleasure in it and make art out of it in whatever is our ways to do? So Venus will support you. I've been following Venus and tracking with her and talking with her and, you know, receiving her and praying to her for 8 years, and then following these cycles. And all of my clients that I work with have you know, maybe not all, but many that tell me they have tremendous shifts when they begin to align with Venus. I just was at a ceremony on solstice, just happened to be at a circle with this Mayan timekeeper, and he said, yeah, it's the time of the rise of the female nation. And, you know, when we honor the feminine knowing in all of us, then we really are going to get new information about what to do and where to go, because we're going to feel it. It's not going to just be thinking up here. We're going to feel it first and go, yeah, this feels like this is creating a culture of partnership, care, connection. So continued dominator culture is one option, or creating a new partnership culture, which means knowing who we are, knowing what we want, knowing what we value, and being open and listening and asking questions, the power of an open question. So we're quickly coming to the end of our time, and I do want to say that I am inspired by this 8-year apprenticeship with Venus to create a very intensive supportive program for visionary women for 6 months. Some of you have heard about it, Awakening Our Heroine's Heart. And if you are at all sparked to talk with me about that and see if that might be a match for you, I'm going to put my link in the comments, and I'll send out the link. If you're on my email list, you'll get the link. And if you feel like you might want not just the support of, you know, what you've already been doing, but a global community of women leaders who are in this inquiry. How do I lead with my heart and be powerful and create abundance and expand beyond who I've been? How do I ride the wave of my evolution at this incredibly challenging time? Nothing standing in my way of showing up. And then also I'll be doing very intensive astrological coaching with everyone in the program. So it's a small program. We have about 9 spots left. And if you feel called for that and you feel like you'd like that level of holding to really understand this Venus map, I encourage you to book a call and explore it with me and see if it's something that will bring into your life. I would like to see more women in the embodiment movement, in the women's empowerment movement, begin to work with the Venus cycle and begin to teach the Venus cycle and how to sync with it. And, you know, I would say if there's one thing you can do astrologically that is so powerful for these times, follow Venus. And begin to open up that pathway to that ongoing delightful conversation with her. Her is the goodness embodied in this light being, your heart the goodness embodied in your body, and to begin to resonate together and have a conversation, and then to share what you learn. The feminine doesn't do it alone. You know, this is really a way to cut through the conditioning that is holding us back, holding us into our known reality, to break free. Liberation, Uranus in Taurus. Uranus wants to liberate us through our body wisdom, through the feminine wisdom. So I'd love to invite you also into my free Facebook group, Venus Wisdom Collective. If you are not yet in there, you are invited. I share a lot of content in there about the Venus cycle, and the sharing piece is really important. So in this Awakening Our Heroine's Heart, I'm going to create a tighter container, and there'll be more assignments, and there'll be more engagement to really deepen into what this means, and then to look at your personal Venus and what is your signature, because you have the sign, you have the Venus phase, you have where did Venus meet the sun before you were born. You have all of that giving you major clues about what will light you up and what is your feminine dharma at this time. You know, and a lot of us know that, we're on the case, but to really fortify that, to really give that weight, to really invest in that, to really say yes to that, is what this program is about. So I'm actually just copying the link here. If you're looking in the comments, I'm going to paste it there. If you can't find it, reach out to me. You all know where I am. I'm on Facebook. And Venus Wisdom Collective is the name of the group if you're not yet in there and you want to be in a more casual container around following the Venus cycle. You want to discover what your phase is. You want to share your insights. You want to understand more about these different manifestations of feminine consciousness through Venus and how to tap in, and what kind of practices you can do to open up your own being, to trust yourself, to really have confidence that you have this oracle in your body, this treasure of your heart, and it knows what you need to do and where you need to go and which train to get on and which train to not get on. It's inside of us. And so I'm so just really honored by the women who showed up to this today, and men too. I don't see any here, but if there are any, I'm just, the energy is incredible of this group, and you feel very alive and you feel very embodied and you feel very evolutionary already. So I hope you're getting out there and seeing Venus and talking to her. And, you know, just one thing before we end, just, you know, it's so beautiful to give energy. Like, that's the masculine, right? What does the masculine do when he wants to go on a date? He brings flowers, he brings chocolate, you know, he dresses up, he puts that life force energy into showing his adoration, showing his interest. So when we come to Venus, we can bring an offering, we can sing a song, we can bring some wildflowers, we can pour, you know, some spirits. You know, that's what alcohol is. The spirits, the spirit world can receive that in a different way. So many traditions, right, have these spirit offerings. You can pour a little spirits or your favorite drink. You can bring a little feast offering, which is a very very strong practice in the Native American practices. A lot of them is you make this spirit plate of everything you're going to eat. You take a little delicious morsel and you offer it. You dress up energetically, even if it's 5 a.m. and you might put on a little lipstick or a little mascara or whatever. But you go out and you put the energy into those offerings, and then you can drop in like that and receive through your own heart what she has for you, because she is you and you are she, as above, so below. it's just, it's the alchemy, it's the magic of the way the energies in this particular reality work. So I hope you get some beautiful divine guidance from your own heart via Venus, and I hope to see you soon in some place. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your beautiful energy. And yes, I'm opened up my schedule. Just reach out in any way if you want to get on a call, and we shall do it. And enjoy your Venus day. Enjoy your Friday. And don't forget that comet is visible for another week. So if you're up at 5 a.m. and looking at Venus in the northeast, look to the southeast, and maybe you'll catch a sight of that comet. I've been seeing some really amazing pictures. So lots of love to all of you. I'm going to end the recording, and then I'm going to actually just stay for a couple minutes if you have questions and you want to put them in the chat, but I'm going to just end the recording here for those that are